Welcome back to another dose of a healthy dose of Common Sense Ohio. Tons of stuff going on this week. Tons of stuff. Remember, each episode is brought to you by Harper Plus CPA. We've got Deluge Division. Tons of stuff on the BBB still. The big beautiful bill. That may be a news story that doesn't go away for the rest of the year.
I agree. There's going to be a lot of salesmanship,
Wow.
pro and con, on the big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
And there's so much in there
Mhm.
that they're going to be arguing right up until the midterms
Yeah,
about
probably
whether it was a good or bad, net positive or negative,
lawsuits, possibly. I mean,
for
certain
sure,
things.
to
Oh,
stop
yeah.
various items that
Yeah.
are in there. It's very unclear,
Yeah.
on on our program last week, we talked about things that the Senate had changed from the House side. And then it looks like, as passed, the Senate put back in some of those things in order to get the House then to pass its version,
Exactly.
because the Senate did change the bill in major ways. And it's very unclear, I think, at this point, exactly how a lot of this is going to work. For example, we thought last week that the Senate had taken out the work requirement for able-bodied people on Medicaid, like particularly younger people, that they would either have to demonstrate that they're hunting for a job, that they are either doing that or going to school, or that they are doing some kind of public work, 20 hours a week of, whatever, picking up trash or tutoring kids or whatever it is, that they have to demonstrate they're doing something,
Mhm.
trying to get a job, going to school, or volunteering for to maintain their Medicaid payments. Because, Medicaid was initially for poor people, who couldn't afford health care. And it's now been expanded to the point that 1/4 of American adults are on Medicaid now. And it's basically the thing that is breaking the budget in a lot of these states. The big states, the big urban states are
Right.
getting just hammered with these costs. So it's not clear, to me anyway, whether I'm hearing the Senate put that in because people are complaining that, oh, this is onerous to be doing this to people. But yet a week ago, we were told that was taken out of the bill.
Yeah.
So it's really confusing as to what is in this thing. Um, and some of this bill will also have to have regulations promulgated by the Department of Commerce or the Department of Treasury, like no taxes on overtime. Well, how's that going to work for people like Brett and I,
Yeah.
which are, we're sole proprietors, or we're individual people running our subchapter S or whatever LLCs. I mean, I'm putting in like 80 hours a week. So do I take half of my income and call it overtime?
Yeah.
I mean, why do some people, why does a guy who clocks in with a time card, why is his overtime exempt, but like mine wouldn't? Because I'm just doing draws out of my company when I make enough money that
Mhm.
I can pay myself. Then I cut myself a check. And of course, I report that as income. Well, do I consider, for that week or month, how many hours I worked past 40 hours a week? I think they're going to say no. They're
Yeah.
going to say no, unless you are somebody who's getting a regular, time card type of job. You're not going to be eligible to have your overtime tax free.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't know that because they
Right.
haven't promulgated the rules yet. In the same way on no tax on tips. Well, which people are exempt? It's probably going to be waitresses, valets, and bellhops, and maybe hairdressers.
Hairdressers. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
you know,
Or delivery people. I mean,
yeah,
who knows? Yeah. Exactly. Who
traditional
knows? Yeah.
occupations that get
have a tip to
that,
it. Yeah.
where part of their projected income by their employer is like, well, you're going to get tips, so I'm only
Mhm.
paying you this amount per hour because you're going to make way more than that on tips. Well, what about other people that may get tipped?
Yeah. And we've had, well, you have had conversations with a wait staff
Yeah.
that don't want this.
Well, they didn't want to raise in the minimum wage. I think
Was that really came down to? Okay.
yeah, they
Okay.
didn't want that
Okay.
because if they had raised the minimum wage in Ohio, for example, to say $20 an hour, waitresses and bartenders in certain,
Yeah.
restaurants are making way more than
yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
even though maybe their base pay is $5 an hour, but they're getting tipped at maybe the rate of $100 an hour.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, if you jack the minimum wage up to $20, I could see my boss saying, well, there you go. You're making $20 an hour,
Right. Right.
you know?
Yeah. And we've talked about this too, that number one, and how big this a a budget bill is, whether it's the big beautiful bill or whatever the case might
Or
be.
this Ohio's bill,
Ohio's bill
which was
historically,
filled with stuff.
right? That they, this piece that they continue to push it to the 11th hour, put stuff in there at the 11th hour.
Mhm.
There is absolutely no time. And I think this is a really good lesson if people really take a look at this, is that there's no time to thoroughly read what is in that bill
Or think
for
about it.
for a representative
One of
to vote properly
Yeah,
on it,
right,
to digest the pros and the cons
right.
of what each means, other than their own red tinted glasses on what they feel, or they've been told by the party, this has to go through because of this. Whatever.
Well, it's highly intentional to bury stuff in these bills
Yeah.
that would not pass on their own as
Right.
a standalone bill.
Yeah. And we talked about this. A lot of this stuff is not budget. It's law. It has nothing to do with spending money.
Like one of the things that's in the big, beautiful bill that, Trump wanted, and I just can't, it's one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard of, is this $1,000 for every newborn
Yeah.
that the federal government in this bill is supposed to create an account that they're going to deposit $1,000 into to buy stocks or saving bonds or whatever they decide is an eligible investment. Okay. And we all know what's going to happen. It's $1,000 per infant, right? In 2025. We all know that people will say the next budget, right? Or the budget after that, that $1,000 is puny. Like,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. Let's make it 5,000.
Make it 5.
Or make it 10,000.
Yeah.
Like, at what point does the federal government just give people money for the act of being born?
Right.
I mean, and then how is that equitable for all of the, say, 2-year-olds or 1-year-olds that have been born in the last 2 or 3 years, or, they don't get that $1,000
Yeah.
account.
Right.
It's just ones that are born from now on or whenever this date is set.
Or
It's the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
or couples who can't have kids.
Yeah, that's not fair to them.
is
Because their
there
taxes are going to underwrite this.
right. Are they going to do some type of add-on that's like, okay, if you adopt a kid, you
Exactly,
can have that.
right.
It's never ending. Plus,
It's
it's just,
never ending.
but it almost feels like, aren't they already doing that with welfare? I mean, they're paying.
Well-
We've complained about this for poor. Looking at, well, they're a welfare family,
Right.
that they keep having kids to have.
Well, the
Well,
contradictions are rich here. So
Man.
you've got the Republicans condemning this candidate for New York mayor, this Mamdani guy, and they're saying he's a flat out socialist. He wants to give you free transit, free bus and train subway rides, government run grocery stores, free rent, all, free, free college, blah, blah, blah. Right. And yet the same people who are taking shots at him want to just give this year $1,000 to every newborn,
Right.
which we know will be in 10 years, it'll be $10,000.
Right.
And then maybe somebody will say, well, why not we start off every kid with $100,000?
And when does when do we get to the population?
It is socialism.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
And when do we get to the population bell curve? Because again, it's the incentive we need to repopulate. Okay. Bottom line. I mean, that's what's been said. So
Yeah.
when's the bell curve happen that all of a sudden it's like, well, we've got enough. Let's not do this anymore.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
It's going to turn into something else.
A lot is really
just-
unclear.
It just doesn't make any
So
sense.
I have heard politicians on both sides claim that Social Security is now tax exempt for seniors. And yet, when I hear other politicians say, wait a minute, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. We're going to give a $6,000 credit or like a personal exemption on top of the existing exemption you get when you file your tax. We're going to give seniors a $6,000 additional exemption on their income. And that will, for most seniors, cover the taxes that would be due on their Social Security.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then you didn't exempt Social Security.
Right.
What you did was increase the personal exemption for older people.
Yeah.
So why don't you say it that way?
Yeah.
Why are you,
Yeah.
obfuscating what you really did?
Right. We're going to serve you apples for fruit, but it's really applesauce.
Exactly.
Kind of just it's the switch, almost a switch and bait kind of feel.
It's gaslighting people.
It is.
And we're going to end up finding out the truth of this anyway. So why play word games with us? And so I don't know. I think we're going to peel away layers like an onion on this big, beautiful bill over the next, like you said, Brett, next year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's going to be, we're going to find out stuff in there that's truly outrageous that nobody's even talking about.
Right. I agree. Yeah, because it's so deep, and
it's going to reveal itself.
And you see that, and we can
and
talk.
Maybe good stuff.
For sure.
I mean, let's talk about the one thing in there that I think everybody agreed on, and nobody, except maybe the most extreme on the left that wants to tax, everybody at a higher rate, was maintaining the old Trump tax rates.
Yeah.
Because we were looking at, for average Americans, about a 68% hike if the cuts were not extended.
Right.
And so we all like that. I mean, I would say probably 90% of the people, like the idea of continuing a cut, but that is something that is so ethereal, right? You're not going to see additional income flow in. All you're going to be able to process is that, okay, that kept the rates at what they have been.
A status quo feel to it. Right.
Yeah. Right, so it's not going to feel like a cut.
No.
Even though it maintains cuts that happened back in like 2013 or 2016.
Correct.
So at any rate, there were some great things in there. But
for sure. Yeah.
It's confusing.
It is. Yeah. And then, like I said, we'll hopefully time will tell, and it starts to open itself up to know what we're talking about, how it's going to affect our bottom line. Ultimately, that's all we care about. Think about it.
Right.
And that's not selfish. It's that, we have to make a living. We have to be able to survive. We have to be able to, buy a home, rent a home, whatever. And it all affects that. And then what we do with it after we've made the money, that's up to us, sort of thing. But now,
and the maddening thing about Social Security in particular is when you think of that amount so it's been taken out, of your employer and of your paycheck.
Right. It's
been sent to the government. It's been taxed so many different times. It's like when you get it back, why is it getting taxed again? It's like your savings, your 401k and your minimum distributions. It's like, it's been taxed 2 or 3 times by the time I'm getting it back. It's like, can you guys just let me and my family inherit what I want to leave them or what I get in retirement?
Right.
So it's aggravating.
It is. It is. Yeah.
And supposedly in this bill, they also did something to help family businesses like family farms, where the company, whether it's a bookstore or family farm or whatever it is that you want to keep intact and give to your family, something has been done with the estate tax rate to help that situation out.
That's good.
That you don't have to basically sell half the farm to pay the taxes when, grandpa dies.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. That's good to hear.
One of the things that's going on, of course, when we were having our show, it was a couple of days before July the 4th last week. And that's when that terrible storm hit the Kerrville, Texas area, that that county, Kerr County, Texas. And the thing I hate about what's going on in America right now, so I love everybody, but I hate what is happening, is when there's an airplane crash or when there's a hurricane or a tornado, or in this case, a flood, that it gets politicized like almost immediately.
Immediately.
And listen, I'm all in favor of hearings and special committees and blue ribbon panels to look into all of this stuff. But can we wait until the bodies are recovered and the families aren't grieving
Yeah.
in the immediate aftermath? So, like that Camp Mystic, 27 girls missing, and they're basically 8-year-old, like second graders,
Yeah.
third graders, right? And their parents, I can only imagine this is now the sixth or seventh day since that happened. And they're tearing themselves apart,
Mhm.
wondering at this point, wondering where the body of their child is
Right.
and what happened to their child. You know, the idea that they may still be alive is waning, I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
6 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were little children.
Right.
And, there was one Houston city council person or some employee, she got fired by the mayor down there, but she posted that that was a camp for white kids, and she got all racial about it. And it's just like, why are you doing that? And somebody else said stuff like, well, the National Weather Service got cuts under Doge. And then the Weather Service came back and said, well, actually, the Weather Service unit that covers that part of Texas was overstaffed that day because they knew bad weather was coming. So they brought in additional people. So they weren't low on staff.
Mm.
And even the National Weather Service union, which hates Trump because he cut, the Doge thing cut some
Mhm.
of their people. They came out and said the Doge cuts had nothing to do with the warnings that they gave, and they gave warnings well ahead of time. But this was a flood, Brett, that in 45 minutes went from the normal river height, the Guadalupe River, to 26 feet above that in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of a warning, and this is in the middle of the night, 3, 4 in the morning, what kind of a signal or what could you do in the middle of the night when the river goes up 26 feet to evacuate tens of thousands of campers, old people, these children at this camp, etc.? Like you could sound off a tornado siren, and at 3 and 4 in the morning, I think a lot of people just sleep through it.
Probably so.
I mean, I don't know what you're gonna do.
I don't know, and that's what needs to be investigated. Is there a better system? And there may not be.
There may not be.
There
It's an
may
act
not.
of God.
It is an act of God. You're out in the wilderness. There's only so much you can do, and that's basically the agreement you've made when you're out in the wilderness.
Yeah. You're in close
Shit's
contact.
gonna happen.
Yeah, bears,
When you're hiking Grand
mountain
Canyon,
lions.
that is part of. You've got to know
You're at risk.
the weather conditions.
Yeah.
And again, this is not to blame the campers, anybody, but it's just,
No.
but that's the agreement you make when you're doing this. It's the potential's there. Now,
So 2 days before the flood, this is interesting. The Texas Department of Health or the County Board of Health went through Camp Mystic and gave it a passing grade on its emergency preparations.
okay, yeah, but in 45 minutes,
What
what are you going to do?
One of the
That's
owners,
just a once in a lifetime, not once in a generation type of flood.
yeah,
'Cause
maybe
they had
1,000 year.
maybe
I
because
mean, who
because I
knows?
think the last one was in the 80s, and I don't know if it was that bad
I
or
think
not.
10 killed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
similar.
it's just an area that does not absorb water.
So-
It's ice skating on ice.
And they don't get that much rainfall there
Right.
annually. And when they get it at that kind of quantity, there's no runoff system that can contain that.
Right.
They even have dams on the Guadalupe River, but like a dam could not hold back 26 feet of
No.
additional.
Not that force of water. Oh my gosh.
No.
I guess it calls into play why I've never been to that camp. I don't know if I've ever been in that camp, but it must be a gorgeous area and a great place to have a camp. But I guess I don't know why you'd put a camp in a flood zone area, though.
Well,
I don't know. I mean, again, it's not to blame anybody,
yeah.
but it just seems kind of odd
Well,
that you
apparently,
would. But again, it only happens every
there's
40 years. But gosh,
apparently there's dozens of camps along that river.
okay, yeah.
They're focusing on
So,
Camp Mystic because it's the one that had the little Christian girls camp,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And one of the owners of that camp actually died trying to save people. So,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
how do you even train for that? How do you train for that type of evacuation?
well, there was
You know what I mean?
a
Yeah.
sheriff in one of the
Wow.
adjoining counties. In answering the call for the flood, this excuse me, he was a fire chief for one of the fire departments in that area. And his truck, when he was crossing, the river came up so fast, it took his truck down the river and he died.
Yeah.
And he was trained in fast water rescue. He's the chief of the fire department. He's dead.
Yeah.
So first responders, as you say,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the camp owner of Mystic, this fire chief, some people who were trained up and knew intimately about the river and the camps. I mean,
Yeah.
they gave their lives to
Right.
try to, save people.
Yeah. I think it's our natural instinct to blame somebody when something goes wrong.
Right.
It is. Yeah. And I totally understand that.
Right.
But it seems to become, it doesn't even seem to be coming out of the parents' mouths. It's politician talk.
It's politicians trying to
like,
blame the other side
to get their soundbite,
to make a point.
To make a point. And let the dust settle.
Let the dust settle. Exactly right.
Because you don't even know what you're talking about. And again, that type of fast retort, fast response to a situation comes out of every level of politician's mouth.
Yeah.
It just does. And stop doing that. And I know you probably have a reporter sticking a microphone in your mouth. You know what? Your answer can be, don't know yet. We will get back with you. You don't have to give a response.
So the stats are really grim. They're over 100 recovered that they know are dead.
Yeah.
Okay. They're missing. They're over 100 that registered at a campsite. Nobody's heard from them. And they're seeing their RV half sunk in the river. And they're, they don't, the families of these people now have had almost a week to see if, their brother, sister, grandpa, grandma, whatever, are they answering their cell phones? Have they popped up and said, hey, I'm okay? So they've got well over 100 that are still missing.
Yeah. And Ohio is sending troopers and canines to down there. So
I think it's going to be
Ohio troopers and canines. So, I mean, lots of states are, but just so we know we're doing our part here.
I think when it's all done, Brett, it's going to be close to 300 dead.
Could be.
Yeah. Because they're at 100, over 100 that are pronounced dead. They're at over 100 that are missing. And there's people at these campgrounds that they don't even know that they were there at the campground.
Right.
Like they just pulled up,
sure,
in a park and they park for the night.
Yeah.
So what I'm told is during the summer, like these months we're in right now, on that Guadalupe River, tens of thousands of people on a weekend can be found. So it's like, I don't know, like 34 miles or 60 miles, something. It's a huge, long river. And it's usually very gentle. And tens of thousands of people will be tubing. Like just floating down the river.
Lazy river kind of feel to it.
Yeah. And getting on a little bus to take them back up river to their car. Like this is a thing they do on that river all summer long. So how many of those people, we don't even know. That no one knows that they're missing. I think we're going to get to 250, 300.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Horrible.
Yeah. Wow.
Some other things.
Yeah.
The Epstein memo that came out from the DOJ. So it turns out that Pam Bondi, back in January, somebody said, hey, do you have that list that supposedly exists of Jeffrey Epstein's clients that supposedly raped these underage girls of 15, 16, 17 years old that were being trafficked by Ghislaine Maxwell and him. And she's serving prison time. So they've convicted her. And of course, he was in jail, pending his sentence. So when he committed suicide. So they're saying, first of all, he wasn't murdered. They put out video footage showing in the hallway what the FBI contends is definitive proof that nobody came into that hallway except the janitor lady to empty trash cans. And then number two, they're saying there is no list. So when Pam Bondi was asked by the reporter, hey, do you have this list? She replied, and so everybody thought there was a list. She replied pretty sloppily. She said, well, that's on my desk and I'm reviewing it. And what she now says she meant is that matter of Jeffrey Epstein was on her desk. In other words, the entire situation, the file, she is saying she was not answering that reporter's specific question about an alleged client list, but that she was saying the Epstein matter is on her desk and she's going to release it soon. And in fact, they did release the airplane logs showing, like, that's public knowledge now, that Bill Clinton or Alan Dershowitz or whoever flew on Epstein's plane, but that doesn't prove that they did anything illegal.
No,
that means that they were on the plane.
It's just a manifesto.
Yeah,
or actually, the manifest, I should say,
so
of who's on.
To take a leap from that Bill Clinton raped little girls is outrageous without any proof.
Right.
But yet people thought that there would be a client, like Al Capone would have like a list of people he's selling illegal booze to, and they never found that list. So I don't know that criminals keep a list of their crimes and write down who all their friends are.
If they do, it's probably in code. I mean, but
I don't know.
Criminals are stupid too, but yeah, exactly.
And another thing I heard that I thought was unfair. Okay, so I'm not Mr. Wexner's defense attorney, but Clay Travis was on the radio yesterday, carried here in Ohio by 610 WTVN. And his program, he said that the reason Epstein befriended Les Wexner, which Les Wexner claims he was a victim financially, that Epstein lost and stole millions of dollars from him. But he said that the reason he was friends with Les Wexner was because Wexner owned at the time Victoria's Secret, and that was a way for Epstein to get dates or to hang out his rich friends. He could say, "Oh, I'm gonna get you into an after party, with Victoria's Secret girls," and he doesn't know that, but he rolled that out as his theory, and I just don't think, like, it's kind of like this the flood thing. If you don't have proof of this kind of stuff, you're just rolling out bullshit.
Yeah.
And okay, you can like Mr. Wexner or not like him, but fair is when you have facts.
Correct.
And to say something like that,
I'm
just like, okay, look, you can have your suspicions, but if you don't have the facts, man, I don't think you should be speculating.
Especially, if you're going to really put it in, this is what I think. I don't have anything to, you continue to cloud it with that at least versus just stating it as a fact. And again, it's that to cause reaction, to have people talk about what he just said. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
I think he was, so I'll give my opinion. I think he found a guy who was vulnerable, who was willing to make multi-million-dollar investments, with him. And then he stole the money. And Wexner says, I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be this guy who knows how to manage money and manage, corporations. And I wasn't going to go to the authorities and say, this guy ripped me off for whatever millions of dollars. I decided that was bad PR for me. So
and that's true. It would have been, because it would have put a dent in the armor that you cannot pound out.
That's right.
Definitely.
Right. I got ripped off by a confidence man.
Exactly.
So I'm not the genius you all thought I was.
That holds water. That holds water because you and I both know, owning a business, you don't want people to know that you're stupid.
Yeah.
You
made
a mistake.
That's
you
right.
Made a bad decision, or that you were conned. You don't want that other than maybe within your inner circle to protect them too. I'm sure he talked about it. Right. Because those at that level of CEO, of business owner, they have their people that they can fight in.
And they don't necessarily want to file a police report because then it's public knowledge.
No.
And
They'll
away
figure it out.
you go.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting thing. Couple of quickies here, Brett. Elon Musk has now rolled out the American Party.
Yeah.
He's calling it, and
but he's got a strategy behind it.
He's got a fortune.
I know.
He's the richest man on earth.
Yeah. So his strategy is to go after a few weak House seats and a few weak Senate seats. I mean, at least he's not just blowing smoke and going, I'm going to do this. It's like the guy has a plan.
We'll see
whether it happens or not. But I'm not that I'm impressed or I'm going to go with that party, but I'm thinking, okay, the guy's thought it out.
So some of the political commentators, I thought this was interesting. They are saying, in a way, if you really think about it, Trump has started a third party because the Republican Party bears no resemblance whatsoever to the Republican Party that George Bush, either of them, used to oversee.
Yeah.
It's completely different. It's a mixture now. I mean, you look at the unions that endorsed Trump in the last election. And Trump, like this $1,000 per infant being born, those are lefty ideas. He is not a conservative, a movement conservative. He's a populist, is what I would say. He's like Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy tried a third party called the Bull Moose Party, and it failed. And Ross Perot tried whatever that thing was called. He tried a third party, and it failed. And Glenn Beck tried the Tea Party, and it failed. And the Tea Party kind of morphed into, the MAGA movement.
Yeah.
But it didn't stand as a third party. And I don't know. I don't think people are going to graft onto a billionaire. I saw how many positive posts he got on Twitter. It was 144,000 people. Okay.
Yeah.
I think probably when you analyze the old Republican Party, those are the people out in left field that probably want to start, some kind of, something different. And then the Democrat Party has changed a lot. Where are the Sam Nunn and the Joe Lieberman Democrats? They don't exist apparently, or there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
So
no, I think it's interesting because looking at his strategy and just to play it out. So let's say he's successful in just targeting those 2 or 3 seats in the Senate and 2 or 3 seats enough that it messes with legislation, that it messes with caucus, it messes with It's possible. It's possible to do it because he, like you said, he may find those 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 Republicans that have been disenfranchised, and they may be household names. They may not be radical,
right?
And they're just like, Elon says, you got my money, let's go do it.
Yeah.
And they're on message, and the message, I think Elon gets it. He knows what the message needs to be.
Well, he's a fiscal conservative, and he hated the BBB.
He's been ingrained in government for how many weeks? 13 weeks.
Yeah.
He knows how the sausage is made.
Yeah. Again, I'm maybe putting a whole lot more, spotlight on gas on the fire, but it's possible. He and Rand Paul and this Thomas Massey guy, they voted against this BBB because it did not make these deep cuts that Doge wanted.
And you have disenfranchised Republicans or conservatives, whatever you want to say about this.
Well, like
that
libertarians, like Rand Paul.
They could raise their hand going, Elon, let's have a meal. Let's talk. Well, I want your money. If you can help me get in office, I'm all about it. And find out what that message is on what his party is moving forward.
Well,
it's a possibility.
It's the balanced budget party.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's what he's going
and
back
that's
to.
How non-controversial is that?
Well,
you know what I mean? If you think about it to a certain degree.
So one of the horrible things the BBB did is it raised the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. So I remember when Biden raised the debt ceiling by like 3 or 4 trillion, and everybody wigged out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was outrageous.
Yeah.
And here we got Trump. Like I said, he's not a fiscal conservative. He is not a movement conservative. And that's what is ticking off Elon, because Trump is raising the debt. So what was Doge all about? Elon said, I'm going to try to find $1 trillion in cuts. He ended up finding about half of that. And the rest of it, people, don't want to roll back Social Security or Medicaid benefits. And so he didn't touch those.
Mhm.
But to really tackle the trillions of debt, we're going to have to do one of two things. The economy is going to have to grow at like 5% a year, where the income can cover this debt that we're paying to China, or we got to cut programs and shrink the size of federal government. And that's what Elon wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
That's not going to be popular.
No, and I can only think in his mind going, "What was I doing? Talk about
What a waste of my time.
Waste of my time,
Right.
and it hurt my company. It hurt my company by doing
and
this.
future business.
Yeah.
So now that he and
Right.
Trump are at loggerheads, Trump is saying things like, "Well, maybe we'll have to review that contract we have with you."
Yeah, which
here we go. And then Elon says, "I'll tell you what, I'll cancel that contract. I so don't need the federal government." So they're both talking crazy talk.
Yeah,
Because in fact, we do need some of this technology from not necessarily Tesla, but like Starlink.
Right. That piece of it.
That has saved a lot of lives.
Take EV off and take the car, take the car manufacturer, take that off the table.
Right.
That should not be under contract. But the other stuff,
there's some good stuff
there's
there.
good stuff. Right.
People who have lost their ability to speak or their use of their limbs. This Neuralink is showing, for epilepsy patients and for people with terrible injuries, some real promise.
Yeah.
So hey.
Yeah. A friend of mine, his wife, Parkinson's, and they've been doing some of that piece too. Is basically it's generative AI in their brain.
Yeah.
And it's learning, and he said he's seeing a marked difference in the Parkinson's.
That's awesome.
And the tremors and like that. He says he watches how it works with her brain waves.
Wow.
He says, Brett, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It is totally amazing. It's like, Star Trek time, that kind of stuff. And so, yes, there are some positives to this that we need to continue to support.
Exactly.
To make life better for people that it wasn't their fault they caught this malady,
So one other thing that happened, I think maybe just yesterday, is the TSA came out and somebody got a hold of this policy initiative. They, after 20 years of having to take your shoes off at the airport, the TSA is saying, we're thinking of getting rid of that.
Thank God.
At least at big airports.
Thank God.
To start with, without, you don't have to buy like that TSA pre-check clearance thing. This will be for everybody.
Thank God.
This will be for everybody. And what was that guy? Richard, what was his name? Anyway, that Richard the shoe bomber, he's a guy that caused this for 20 years. And what it is, the magnetrons or whatever they call the scanners, there was something about the bottom like inch and a half or something of that X-ray thing when you go in there and you got to put your hands
and we
up.
can't create technology to
well
read
now
that.
we can.
Now we can't.
So they're saying because technology has improved and we can see into your shoe now. That's why you don't have to take your shoes off.
So we could now have that, but I get stopped every time because I have literally a piece of lint in my pocket. Literally. He said, "Oh yeah, you got to empty out everything." Because when we went to Colorado for vacation earlier this summer, and he pulls me out, and of course I got to get the 3rd degree hand up crotch, hand up everything. Sure. It was like because of a damn piece of lint in my pocket.
And it's never a good looking person of the.
Of
somebody of whatever gender you're interested in. It's never that.
I'm usually the one flagged. I really am. We 3 or 4 traveling.
Yeah.
Even my son says, "You're always the one that gets flagged." I said, "I know. I don't get it. Like,
so
I look at him cross-eyed or something."
We were doing a flight to Europe a few years ago, and my son, he had Play-Doh and Matchbox cars and Tinker Toys. He had all this wild stuff in his little knapsack that was, and they naturally, when they saw this on on their X-ray machine, they were like, and of course it smelled whatever kind of petroleum is in Play-Doh.
Right.
So it just freaked out. And they went through, I think at the time, Paul was like 6. And they went through his backpack item by item. It was it was literally a Saturday Night Live comedy
I was
routine
going to painful,
because
wasn't it? It
this
was
guy's
painful.
holding up like a little dinosaur, a little plant, and he's going like this, and then putting that in the good pile, and then here's a little can of Play-Doh. Oh, that's more than whatever
6 ounces of Play-Doh or whatever. Yeah.
Oh my
And
god!
the Play-Doh, okay, I could see that could be a potential problem. I get that, but it's that. But the toys, oh my gosh,
It
oh
was
my
so
gosh.
funny.
Oh my gosh, jeez.
So in Ohio, mega bit of news here. I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, that this JobsOhio, which we've talked a lot about, this entity. So they have an exclusive franchise to run the purchasing for the Ohio Department of Liquor Control. Like they do the purchasing, and they also assign what goes where, the distribution of the booze to all the liquor store franchises across the state. So they essentially run, if you will, they manage the Department of Liquor Control in effect, right? And they have this exclusive right to do this. If you can believe this, the state controlling board extended them to the year 2053. And there is a Supreme Court decision on the books that the state of Ohio auditor at the time was Dave Yost, and he went to the Supreme Court to get the right to audit this private corporation set up by the legislature and the governor to do development outreach to corporations. Come to Ohio, ostensibly to create jobs and income for the people of Ohio. They cannot be audited by the state of Ohio. Yet they run a state agency, liquor of all things. I mentioned Al Capone earlier, right? I mean, so anyway, they just awarded to Anduril, which Anduril is building this like 1 I don't know, whatever it is, $1 billion factory in Pickaway County, just kind of south of Rickenbacker National Guard base in Ohio, in the greater Columbus area. But Pickaway County's further south. They're going to build a factory there that they say is going to employ 4,000 workers. And JobsOhio, which famously wrote a non-recoverable contract with Intel. So when Intel slowed its plans down, the taxpayers aren't able to claw back that money from Intel. So they wrote this contract, hopefully a better one with Anduril, that says they have to operate this facility for at least 20 years, or else I don't know what percent of the $310 million, which is double the amount Intel got. So Intel got something like 140 million. These guys got more than twice that, 310 million over the course of the next 10 years. And the investment that they are making is a total of about 1.25 or 1.3 billion dollars to build this factory. The 310 is 25% of what Anduril is going to spend building this factory. It's a huge chunk of money. And it may be like Intel. And maybe its contract's written so loosely that it says, oh, yeah, we intend to operate it for 20 years, but maybe there's no provision for clawing it back.
Right.
We don't know because we can't audit this corporation.
Right. To go over this again, I mean, it's not a state agency.
It's not a state agency.
Google this up. It's a private entity. It reports to the Ohio Department of Development. That doesn't mean anything because it gives an annual report, strat plan, and records related to incentive agreements.
Yeah.
Those agreements are already done.
The governor, no state person appoints the board of JobsOhio.
Right.
They have their own board and their own, system of selecting who is going to be on the board.
And it does.
We're not even allowed to know how much they pay the board member.
Right. I mean, it does have some financial oversight, but it's an audit of its financial statements by a Big Four accounting firm and 3 quarterly reviews. That's just looking at pluses and minuses.
So
ultimately, we don't know devil in details opportunities.
So Big Four accounting firms also audited First Energy and Enron.
Yeah.
So what's that mean? So what? A Big Four firm's auditing you.
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out.
It just, why the secrecy? And I understand, well, it's the competitive edge. We don't want Indiana to have this job. We don't want Kentucky. I call BS.
I do too.
I call BS because
especially after the fact.
No.
I think once you make these grants,
yes,
that whole thing should be auditable.
Exactly, because it's a done deal.
It's a done deal, man.
It's been wet signatured. It's done.
Yes.
Let's see what the deal is. So they don't want it seen because they don't want people to know because they know it's a bad deal.
And I think
probably.
And I think furthermore,
there's something bad about it.
There should be legislation that the terms of any deal before they're final have to go by the Attorney General of the state of Ohio.
Yes,
because Yost says, hey, they did that contract with Intel. There's nothing I can do under state law to claw that money back.
Yeah.
They wrote a poor contract.
Yeah. Right. It is.
140
I don't know. It makes you almost speechless because it's frustrating as hell.
Right.
It just is that it's like, for the most part, we kind of know where our tax money goes and how it's spent. We get to vote people in and out if we don't like how they spend it. Here, billions of dollars being sent out, we don't have a say so. We can only look at it and just scratch our head going, why did we walk into that one? Why did we walk into that one?
And these guys, so Anduril, this Palmer Luckey, who is the CEO, he has said that in the near future, they're going to do an IPO. So in effect, it's kind of like the Brown Stadium deal. We are helping billionaires, right, become bigger billionaires. Anduril also, Microsoft has a contract worth $22 billion with the Department of Defense to develop these long-range headsets where you have a drone up there and it can see over the horizon like in virtual reality. So you're a soldier on the field. You don't know what's over the hill because you can't see it with your eyeballs and your binoculars, but you put on this headset and it's like you're looking over the hill. So Microsoft has failed. They got this contract in 2021 for $22 billion for the Army, and they have failed to produce anything yet. So they're sliding that contract over to Anduril in exchange for Anduril using Microsoft's cloud service, Azure, to store, their data.
Gotcha.
And so that plus this Ohio drone and autonomous airplane factory in Pickaway County, those two things are in the news real hot. That's going to factor into people jacking up their IPO.
Yeah.
And we're paying for it.
Right.
One's a defense contract and the other's a contract with JobsOhio.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And we wonder, why the middle class is continuing to dwindle.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, and again, it's not like necessarily taking money from the middle class per se, but it's like, but you're not developing a middle class situation here.
No,
by giving away all this money.
No, and really aggravating. What the middle class really was screaming for was property tax relief.
Yeah.
And Governor DeWine vetoed all that in the Ohio state budget bill.
Yeah.
And so, like the one thing that people on fixed income really can't afford when their property values go crazy, but they're not going to move anywhere. A 75-year-old little old lady living in the house for the rest of her life, she is kind of stuck there. She's in that house. And the only way out of it would be for her to sell it and then turn that money over to some nursing home to bilk her at like $15,000 a month.
Exactly.
To take care of her.
Yeah.
Right. And so Governor DeWine the state legislature had passed things like the county can reduce on its own property taxes in certain areas to get it back to the amount that people were used to paying, right? He vetoed all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, what about the middle class here in Ohio? It's just like taxes are going up, property values are going up. I don't know how Generation Z or X or Y or whatever they are now, I don't know how they're going to be able to buy anything, buy a house in Ohio.
Yeah, if that is the goal. I mean, and a lot of it is I've seen research too that this generation may not want to buy a home. Their outlook is a little bit different, but it's that But financially, you kind of have to look at going,
Well, they don't want to buy a home because it's not even in the reality bucket.
it's not even the
Like
reality
they're
bucket.
not even,
Yeah.
like, oh, you mean mom and dad got into their house for 150,000 and now it's worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, I can't afford a mortgage for $1 million.
Right.
So I'm not even going to think about
Yeah.
it.
Well, and when we take a look at it, just dawned on me right now too, is if we truly want to retain the intellect, that brain drain of if you own a home, you're less likely to move.
Oh,
When you
that's
think about
true.
it too.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're in
You're
an
putting roots
apartment,
down.
you're putting roots down.
Yeah.
So if you take away that opportunity to buy a home, you are going to lose people. They're going
For
to
sure.
they're going to go to, like my daughter did, went to Colorado.
Yeah. Lots of people
and
like
it's
that.
more
Sure.
expensive to live in
Yeah.
Colorado, but she
Yeah.
still went, sort
Right.
of thing. But a lot of people do that. Younger people
Absolutely.
do that, but we're not
Absolutely.
giving them the opportunity to put roots down here.
They're not tethered to anything except their
Nothing.
family, and they figure, well, I can fly back and forth.
Right. Right. And depending on family situations, how old mom and dad are, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, right. But if we don't give them that opportunity, try to figure out a situation where they can buy a home, and it doesn't have to be grandiose home. It got to be a 1,500 or 1,000 square foot home.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
It's a
Or
starter
even a
home.
condo. Like
It's
it's all outrageous.
We all started with a starter home.
Yeah.
We all, I mean, at least in our generation, that
Exactly.
sort of thing. And you stay there the rest of your life or move up. So yeah.
Well, we'll do a couple of justice things and
Yeah.
then do winners and losers.
Oh,
I guess.
well, you had a story about a
Oh,
1-year-old.
yeah, so
I do want to talk
I
about
don't.
that.
So listen,
Gosh.
I'm not trying to be cute, but I don't have a dog in the fight, right? About this pit bull thing. There are people who want to ban that breed or control it severely. Like, it would be like owning a tiger or a lion or something, like highly licensed and tracked. And some people just want to ban the breed, which I don't even know what that means. Euthanize them all?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But a 1-year-old child in her own home or his home, I don't know the gender, but a 1-year-old in Tuscarawas County in Dover Township, which is like 40 minutes south of Akron, was mutilated by her own pet in her house. And so, like this, there have been several dog cases in Ohio this year that have either gone to trial this year or had occurred. I think there was one here in Columbus, again, a pit bull. And I don't know if the news media is highlighting pit bulls in particular, and maybe Rottweilers are just as bad of likely to happen. I don't know. I don't know the facts, but I do know that I keep seeing something about pit bulls, and maybe, I mean, so, I'm a conservative. I'm kind of a libertarian. It would be fine with me if somebody wants to own an elephant if they're able and competent at taking care of an elephant, right? That it's being given the right environment, fed the right stuff, getting the right medical treatment, etc. Like, I think people should be able to do a lot of what they want to do, including owning pit bulls. But if these things are like, I don't know, terrorist cells, and that they spontaneously go off, I don't know if that's true or false, but if that's a problem, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
A 1-year-old being chewed to death
I
by
know.
her own pet.
Yeah, and we volunteered at the Humane Society for quite a few years, and of course, Humane Society, and I think any dog shelter has their run of pit bulls going through. I mean, there isn't a time when you go through there and most of the cages are a pit bull mix or a pit bull.
Wow.
Oh yeah, for sure. There is a boatload of pit bulls available today.
Is that because people get scared as they
I
get
guess,
older?
or they just breed them.
That thing starts growling at them, and they go, "Hey, you're out of the house."
Something to something you don't know the history of why they're there, but they're there.
Wow.
And I've gained a new respect for pit bulls. They are the sweetest dogs in the world. They really are. But they're bred to do a certain thing. So they got a gene in them that you fire off. There was one instance where I was walking one. It was in the middle of winter. I brought the dog back in, so I was layered up, 2 or 3 layers. And this one still had not really been socialized that well. Sweet thing, but when it wanted to play, and it grabbed my arm. And when that thing grabbed my arm, you knew it was business.
Wow.
Yeah, and it freaked me out. You know,
Yeah.
luckily I had layers on because it didn't have a gentle hold. It had a playful hold, but it still, it didn't get into the skin, but it would have been if I hadn't. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I could see where, especially a 1-year-old.
It wouldn't take
Oh,
much
no, I
to
mean,
mutilate a
the
1-year-old.
dog might have been playing accidentally, and it's rough play that a pit bull does, and a
Yeah.
1-year-old is not gonna be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So, whatever the
Yeah.
situation is, but no, I don't know if it's I think an owner really has to think about why do you other than, okay, safety, maybe you live in a bad neighborhood and the pit bull is a safety measure for you. Okay, I get that. I get it, but,
Yeah.
maybe you need to make different decisions when you have kids in the house too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'd rather not ban an animal, maybe some safety measures, I mean, if we in the last Ohio budget bill, we have to regulate how
Everything.
we sell queen bees. So if you have an aviary, you have to register you've got the aviary and that sort of thing. But if you sell, trade, eliminate your aviary, you have to pay a fee to get rid of that queen bee.
Wow.
So why can't we do this with pit bulls? It's a $50 fee, but
Yeah.
it's like, but I had to research going $50 fee for queen bee trade, sell, that sort of thing. And it's controlling the disease that's going
Well,
on with
and
the
if
bees.
you
But it's like we can control queen bees. I think we can maybe put a little bit of thought into pit bulls,
well,
maybe,
and if
or
you
dangerous dogs. I don't know.
if you talk to dog wardens in
Oh,
almost any county, the way that they find out when people don't have a license is this is unbelievable, but some of them actually hire like college students in the summer and they canvass door to door. They ring the doorbell. They say, "Hey, I'm with the dog warden." Okay. Rover runs up to the door, right? They
yeah.
look at Rover's neck and they don't see a license tag, right? And they write a citation right there on the spot, like where's your license for Rover? Oh, I don't have one. So it's going to be the people who basically, it's like gun laws. It's like any
Yeah.
kind of law.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like speeding laws. If we told pit bull owners that you got to do X, Y, Z,
It's going to go underground.
80%
Yeah,
of
it
them
will. It
will comply.
Yeah.
But the 20% that probably are the problem people,
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah,
not going
yeah,
to.
and it's just there are a lot of I know when a daughter and son looking at apartments, there are certain breeds that apartments will not allow, and pit bull's one of them,
Yep.
and a rot.
Oh, for
They just
sure.
won't
Right.
just won't have them.
Yeah.
So it's inherent in the breed. You just got to be careful, and that's a tragedy. That really, really is. But I think it's if you own a snake, you're going to have problems with the snake. I mean,
Sure.
people love
Yeah.
reptiles,
Exotic animals. in
exotic
general.
animals.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's going to be a
Well,
problem.
we had that nutter that basically committed suicide by exotic animals here in Ohio, out in like the Zanesville area,
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah.
He had that big,
Yeah.
lion and tiger and I don't know, bears.
Yeah.
And
So-
he let them all loose one night. And one of them slaughtered him, like turned right around and killed him.
All right.
And then the county sheriffs had to go out and shoot all of these lions and which did nothing wrong. They shot orangutans
Yeah.
and monkeys, and it was just a
Yeah.
big kill because they can't be running loose.
All right.
So
All right.
anyway.
Yeah. Gosh.
So that led to highly regulated laws on big cats, for
Mhm.
example.
Yeah.
And Jack Hanna lobbied for that, and the legislature went along with it. So now there's a big cat rescue, private. It's not really a zoo; it's a shelter,
Mhm.
and it's for like a bobcat that would get hit by a car, or a mountain lion that gets cancer or something like that. And these people are not allowed to take in now any more mountain lions or bobcats.
Hmm.
Even if they're sick and they need a shelter, they're just put to death right away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's bad that comes out of
Right.
some of these things,
Exactly.
well-intentioned.
Exactly.
So last
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
Steve kind of climbed all over me because, he had some comments about, I thought a very poor sentencing decision came out of that semi-tractor wreck into the school bus and the chaperone cars where it killed 6 people. And so I decided to look into this a bit more because Steve raised what I considered, the standard for convicting somebody is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not beyond absolute doubt. You know, it's not beyond, it's not that you're absolutely sure this person's guilty. The standard for finding somebody guilty is beyond a reasonable doubt. And in my opinion, Steve raised some unreasonable things. Like he said, well, what if the truck driver's asleep? So I looked into this a little bit. The trial, so it was a complete trial. It was by a judge, not a jury, David Brandstuhl of Common Pleas in Licking County. And he concluded that the prosecution did not prove its case on the felony counts. So he convicted the truck driver on a misdemeanor count of vehicular homicide, which is why he only got 18 months for killing 6 people and injuring, I don't know, another 20. So that's 3 months per death, if you want to think of it that way. And he's already served about 9 months or 10 months that he gets credit for. So he's out in like 7 months. So I thought that was a poor decision. And let me give you some evidence of that Steve and I did not discuss because neither of us had the facts last week.
Right.
But one of the things was at trial, an Indiana state trooper had pulled this guy over in the previous year for speeding. And on his phone was a streaming game that was still open to the game. And of course, the trooper can't prove, like maybe he turned that on while he was waiting for the trooper to write the report. The trooper can't prove that he was streaming and playing the game while he was going down the highway, right? But it is a fact that he had a game on. It's also a fact that in the Ohio wreck, this guy had just streamed like within 20 minutes before the accident. So he had gotten a download of something and his cell phone itself burned up in the fire at the accident. So they were not able to do, forensics on his phone, but they were able to get download statistics. And it was a game or a movie or something, a large gig type of data that came to his phone right before the accident. The other things in the report is there were no evasive steering moves of the steering wheel, and he had no touching of the brakes. So he sailed right into these stopped vehicles at full speed and without steering. So I think it's reasonable. So see, I would be different than the judge. I'd look at these facts, and one of the other, so let me give you the other big third thing. In the last 12 years, this guy has had 9 moving violations. I don't even know how he kept his license.
I was just going to ask, how does one
I don't know. You can get credit, like if you do a class, like they'll take away. I don't know, but 9 moving violations around the country, right? Not all in Ohio, in the last like 12 years before the accident. So to me, right, with this evidence about what happened at the accident, no steering, and the fact that in common law in Ohio, you are strictly liable if you ass end somebody in front of you. Like, you can't claim that you're not liable if your brakes fail because you have a positive duty as a car owner or a truck owner or an operator to maintain safe brakes. So you can't say, to get out of trouble, you can't say, oh, my brakes failed, because you have a duty to have working brakes. It's called strict liability. This guy rear-ended these people and killed a bunch. So I think it was a bad decision. And the victims' families gave this judge, I read some of the comments, they absolutely ripped him a new one. They thought he came to, like, he was more worried about the person being prosecuted than he was about the victims. That's what they said to this judge. And I would agree with them. And I like the Brandstuhl family. So I go buy their peaches at their farm. I think David is a great guy. His father's a great guy. I think he made a terrible decision. So
yeah, I was going to say those details weren't available last week to talk
no,
about.
No,
so
I didn't.
I'm sure Steve would love to digest those.
Yeah, and he probably still would disagree with me.
I don't know,
which is fine. Which is fine.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think details matter. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the evidence does matter.
Yeah, for sure, exactly.
And I guess for Sean Diddy Combs, because since our last show, he was found not guilty on all those really big charges, the RICO charges of conspiracy and all that. What they did find him guilty of, and I guess the sentencing's coming up, is trafficking for prostitution. So that's still a felony.
Yeah.
He's probably going to get some jail time or community service or something. But they kind of overcharged him, I think.
Maybe.
I mean,
Maybe.
you're allowed to have a sick sexual party if everybody's a consenting adult. And it may offend people, but you're not allowed to get like in that hallway where he kicked that woman and beat her up in the hallway. No, you can't do that.
No.
That's
no.
an assault.
Right.
And he could not be charged for that assault because the statute of limitations ran.
Okay.
So they charged him with prostitution,
Hmm.
trafficking. And we'll
Right.
see what he does on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
My
Yeah.
winner is
Yeah.
the president won at the Supreme Court yesterday the right to do these mass layoffs within the federal government.
Yeah.
So, if it is determined that, say, the USAID or some other program is no longer going to be funded, that they can lay off whatever number of workers, Department of Ed, Department of Transport, whatever the department is.
Yeah.
If the chief executive that is his function to run those departments, if he or she as president wants to lay people off, they have the right to do it under this decision.
All right.
My loser is and I love this. So Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, who normally cheerleads some of the wackier stuff, he came out with a very balanced, very responsible statement yesterday saying that the people within his party that are calling for armed conflict with ICE, to get ICE to shoot at them so that they somehow have better cred that they're fighting ICE, and ICE just killed some guy that was shooting at them. So they respond. Like if you shoot at a police officer, surprise, they may shoot back, to defend their lives. And he said, no, you can't do it. Look, we're not going to be, as Democrats, the party of violent confrontation with law enforcement. Because after all, that contradicts everything that Democrats said about J6. They said on J6 that those Trumpers were triggering violent confrontation with Capitol Police, right? And they were against that. And I'm against it. And most people are against it. But then you can't say, well, when it comes to Border Patrol and ICE, yeah, we're in favor of violent confrontation. So good for Senator Blumenthal. And the losers in that case would be the people he's criticizing. I agree with him.
Yeah. I one loser. I don't really have a winner this week. That's sad because I need to look for positive stories. But
it was a rough week for positive.
I guess it might have been. I mean, that was it too.
With that flood.
Yeah, because that kind of overshadows some news cycles and news stories too. But the one thing that amazing, and we're going to focus on Ohio here, that buried in the budget was a public records change that there's a change to the Ohio Revised Code that would make text messages and emails from state lawmakers exempt from public records requests.
So on their
You've got to be kidding me.
On their personal cell phones, I have no problem with that. On their state-issued cell phones,
state-issued emails,
that's a public record.
Dude,
I'm total agreement.
We're paying for that.
Yeah,
we're paying for that phone. We're paying for that email, that server, whatever.
Right.
No.
So they want to
It's
hide
ridiculous.
that after the householder convictions.
Yeah.
Right. That were used to convict those First Energy crooks. Hey, man, listen, those email and texts on a state-issued phone or PC or laptop or whatever it is, hey, man, that's our information.
Yes.
If somebody wants to have a private conversation on their T-Mobile phone that they pay for, I don't care about that.
Yeah. I mean, and really, ultimately, it's like, how dare you?
Right.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Say that, business that you're doing, it's just, some things you just kind of go, you don't even have a comment for other than you got to be kidding me.
There are already wholesale violations of the state sunshine law happening every day. We don't need to put into law the right for them to decide official business on their state-issued phones and laptops and will never have access to it and know how these laws got proposed or passed.
Right. And
because that data is not available to us.
And this buried in a budget bill.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Has nothing to do with money.
Because it would not pass if it was a standalone bill.
Exactly.
No way would they have the balls to do that.
Unbelievable.
That's a good one, Brett.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that.
Unbelievable. I saw
the
that. It's like,
attention.
you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Anyway, if you don't like it, get a hold of your, the state legislator that represents you and kind of see how they voted for it.
Let's repeal that.
Yeah. Get it out of there.
Yeah.
Get it out of there. Anyway, so hey, thanks for joining us for another dose of common sense. Be sure to if you've seen this video for the first time, like it, share it. If you're listening to the podcast for the first time, like it, follow, share it, or share pieces, or kind of go, this Brett dude, he has no idea what he's talking about. And go, Norm, cheers, go. But we love your comments, feedback, everything. And so does Harper Plus CPA. They are our sponsor, so you need some tax help. Thanks to Glenn and Julie over at Harper Plus CPA. And we'll get some more common sense to you next week. Thanks for watching and listening.